Why wind turbines suck. Wind power is the worst of all. It is expensive, unreliable, inefficient, has a short lifespan, requires vast resources and land, kills and disrupts wildlife, and to top it all off, the wind turbines destroy the natural beauty of wherever they are installed. With abundant, cheap, reliable hydrocarbons and even small modular reactor technology paving the way for fresh innovations in the nuclear sector, we have to wonder just why are we bankrupting ourselves to install more wind turbines? Reason number one why wind turbines suck. The material cost. When we say wind turbines suck, we don't just mean they suck massive amounts of money from the population and give little to nothing back. No, they are really terrible ways to try and power an energy-hungry society like the one we have painstakingly crafted over the centuries. And that's because wind turbine construction demands an extraordinary amount of human labour and resources compared to other energy production methods. A single 2 to 3 megawatt turbine soaring over 120 metres with blades spanning up to 60 metres requires roughly 1,000 tonnes of steel, 2,500 tonnes of concrete, and 45 tonnes of fiberglass or carbon fibre. Add about 3 to 4 tonnes of copper for wiring, hundreds of pounds of rare earth metals like neodymium and dysprosium for magnets, plus aluminum, zinc and lubricants. All of this really adds up. Mining these materials is labour intensive. Steel and concrete production involves thousands of workers operating heavy machinery in energy hungry plants. Extracting copper and rare earth requires skilled teams managing strip mining or chemical leaching, often in remote regions like China or Australia. Producing 1 ton of rare earths can involve hundreds of man hours and generate 2,000 tons of waste, demanding specialized labor for disposal. Transporting these materials globally via diesel-powered ships and trucks relies on coordinated logistic crews moving thousands of tons across continents. Manufacturing is equally demanding. Forging steel towers, casting concrete foundations, and moulding composite blades requires skilled workers, engineers, and high-energy facilities. Assembly and installation involve team operating cranes, heavy equipment, and sometimes helicopters, with each turbine site requiring weeks of coordinated effort. Compare this to, say, a natural gas plant where a single facility produces far more power with less material and labour per megawatt. The human and resource intensity of wind turbines per installation far outstrips gas, although it's still beaten by hydro and solar. Reason number 2 why wind turbines suck: lifespan. The Renewable Energy Foundation has a brilliant presentation by Professor Gordon Hughes which breaks down the limited lifespans of different kinds of wind turbine installations, as well as so much more. From small to big to offshore and floating offshore, the failure rate is enormous, and their entire lifespan is only between 15 to 25 years. Here's a quote from the presentation, which you can find in the link below. Figure 6 shows the failure curves by turbine category, focusing on the time to the first equipment failure. The results are similar if alternative indicators are used. The conclusions are that offshore wind turbines are less reliable than onshore turbines, and that the older small turbines were much more reliable than the bigger turbines that dominate the wind farms constructed since 2005. Nearly 60% of offshore turbines will experience an equipment failure in the first 5 years of operation. The reliability of 2+ megawatt onshore turbines deteriorates over time, so that the risk of failure increases sharply once they've been operating for more than 10 years. Finally, there are strong locational differences within Denmark, with the expected number of months affected by equipment failure over a 20-year operating life increasing from 8 months in the west of the country to 15 months in the east. The reason seems to be a combination of site choice and the wind turbulence caused by wind flows over land for the prevailing westerly winds. End quote. A turbine's 15 to 25 year lifespan ends with decommissioning when recycling steel is manageable, but disposing of fiberglass blades often requires additional labour due to their non-recyclable nature, and they just end up being buried and covered. Nothing green about that. Reason number 3 why wind turbines suck, and that is constraint payments. And that's basically where wind turbines get paid to switch off. And this following section is a sneak peek from chapter 5 of my upcoming new book, The Advanced Guide to the Climate Con, set for release late August. The failure rate leads to a dramatic increase in the cost of fixing the turbines, which is far higher for offshore turbines. Then add into all of this a big source of what makes wind turbines so expensive: constraint payments. Constraint payments for wind turbines are utterly bonkers when you dig into the logic, or lack thereof. The climate cult pushes renewables as the holy grail, yet we're paying wind farm operators millions to not generate electricity when the grid can't handle their output. In 2022, UK wind farms pocketed over 200 million in constraint payments, which is essentially rewarding them for doing nothing. This exposes the grid's fragility and the overzealous rush to slap turbines everywhere without upgrading infrastructure. If wind power is so reliable and essential, why are we burning cash to switch it off? The insanity deepens when you consider the economics. Consumers foot the bill through higher energy prices, whilst hydrocarbon plants are offered fired up to fill the gap, which is very ironic for a green solution. Supposedly green anyway. The narrative claims wind turbines save the planet, but the data screams inefficiency. Turbines operate at 30 to 40% capacity on average, and their intermittency demands backup systems that undermine the whole net zero fantasy. Meanwhile, the environmental cost of turbine production, mining rare earths to habitat destruction, gets swept under the rug, and constraint payments aren't just wasteful, they're a glaring symptom of a dogmatic, poorly planned energy policy that prioritizes optics over reality. And as you can see by this graph, wind turbine constraint payments have ballooned since 2010 as more have been installed and are predicted to absolutely skyrocket by 2030, costing over £1 billion every single year. This is the insanity we are dealing with, and it shows clear as day why we shouldn't be trying to install any more wind turbines. But wait, there are still more reasons why wind turbines suck. There ends the sneak preview of my upcoming book. Super excited to bring this to you all. In the meantime, before the release, why not check out my original beginner's guide to the Climate Con? Reason number 4 why wind turbines suck: intermittency. To put it simply, what happens when the wind stops? Well, we need a quick to start reliable source of energy, and that comes in the form of hydrocarbons, nearly always gas. So for every wind turbine installed, we need gas power also installed to back it up. Madness. And nobody does a better job at explaining all of this than Paul Burgess. Check out his video series covering what happens when the wind stops. Reason number 5 wind turbines suck: financially unviable. Wind turbines not only take up a lot of land and resources, but all of this comes at a massive financial cost. These spinning bird chopper eyesores are not just worth the investment, and unlike what's predicted by the climate cult, costs are not going down but up. Even with the maturation of the industry, costs are only going up in every way, making wind power less financially viable every passing day. And this and more is all covered in the Climate Con Mastery course, where we go on a speed date through all of the different talking points that you get hit with in a debate, so that you can come to the table like a professional the next time these conversations come up and be able to handle nearly all of the common talking points that come up. And there's over 20 covered in this course, and it's like going on a speed date through all the different subjects. You'll have a quick introduction to all of them, how to handle them in a debate, and then we go on to the next one. Whereas this video has been more of like a wine and dine with the wind turbine subject. We've gone deep, we've gone a bit further, we've expanded our knowledge. But if you're looking to learn more about the Climate Con in general, go check out that course, and you'll see all the different talking points, and each of those talking points themselves could have an entire video and course about them, because they're so in depth when you really get into it. But not everybody needs to know everything there is about each individual subjects, unless you want it to be an absolute top of the class expert. But if you're dealing with people that have only been programmed to a point, you only need the basics, and 99% of the people in this world have just been programmed to a point regarding the climate con bullshit, so you only need to know a little bit more than them to beat them in a debate. Right, let's get back to why wind turbines suck, and that is because of their financial unviability. We have some more information here from Professor Gordon Hughes, which says there is worse to come. And figure 4 and 5, it shows the evolution of average OPEX costs for typical onshore and offshore projects. The graphs are based on analysis of large samples spread over 15 years, which allow for turbine size, water depth, OFTO status, and other factors. In each graph, the blue line shows the costs of a project commissioned in 2008, and note that the OPEX cost is reported in pounds per megawatt per year at 2018 prices. The reason is that the expected load factor for new projects has increased over time. The grey line shows the cost for a project commissioned in 2018. For offshore wind farms, a 2008 project is assumed to be in shallow water with no OFTO. And in case you're wondering, an OFTO stands for Offshore Transmission Owner. OFTOs are responsible for the transmission assets that connect offshore wind farms to the onshore electricity grid. The OFTOs are appointed through a competitive tender process by Ofgem and granted a license to own and operate these assets for a set period, typically 25 years. Whilst the 2018 project is in deep water with an OFTO, the operating cost allows for OFTO charges in the latter case. And that's from Professor Gordon Hughes at the Renewable Energy Foundation. So with wind power, we can see clear as day that the worst is yet to come, and we should do everything we can to oppose the further destruction of our countryside and bank balance in the name of pursuing more green energy. Nothing is green about these monstrosities, and hopefully we will live to see the day they are all decommissioned and relegated to the history books as a bad mistake and a stain on the industrial progress of humanity.